Filmmaking is a very expensive art form. Between the high cost of purchasing equipment and the never-ending list of things you have to buy to have a successful production, even a really basic short film can cost thousands of dollars. For many aspiring filmmakers that don't have the means to pay for their production budgets, that barrier of entry becomes too hard. And while there are always methods to make films cheaper, the dream for any filmmaker is to see their vision come to fruition without having to make concessions along the way. If you have an idea for a short film that you believe in and you're willing to do whatever it takes to make it happen, you don't have to necessarily let financial obstacles stop you. And I know this by personal experience. For my first film out of college, I had an idea for a sci-fi short film that took place in Alaska. And the total budget on that film ended up being $21,000. But thanks to the power of crowdfunding, we raised that amount through the help of friends, family, and strangers online. So how did we do it? My name is Emilio Miguel Torres. I'm a filmmaker, and on this channel, I share my personal work and make content about storytelling and filmmaking. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure you just give that subscribe button a little pat, just a little pat, and listen up, because today I'm going to tell you about everything I know about crowdfunding for short films. And just a quick disclaimer, I'm not an expert on crowdfunding, nor am I a financial advisor. My only goal with this video is to share with you my experience crowdfunding for my film, The Ladder, and I can only hope that knowledge is valuable to you. If you feel like you learned something by the end of this video about crowdfunding that you didn't know before, please drop a like or comment below. I'd really appreciate it. So with that out of the way, let's get started. So here is the crowdfunding campaign for The Ladder. The campaign ended up raising $16,985. Now, that's not the actual amount that you get. Something to keep in mind with crowdfunding campaigns is, these platforms, they take a cut, though it's pretty small. And then also you sometimes have to pay for credit card charges and things like that. So we ended up getting more closer to $15,000 after it was all said and done. So here we have the project, where it's being shot, what type of film it is. We have a brief description. Here we have my pitch video. And then if you scroll down, it says a mission statement, you have information about the project. And then something cool we did is we did these sort of like tiers of incentives for people to donate. So we had a $15 tier, a $25, a $50, $250, $500, and then we also had a $1,000 tier for our executive producer credit. And when you're doing crowdfunding campaigns, it's really helpful to sort of have these tiers that people can contribute at. It kind of incentivizes people to give a specific number rather than just like them having to come up with what number they want to donate. And then typically you want to accompany those different tiers with perks or incentives to donate. We also had a wish list, which were specific parts of production that explained like where the funds were going to go. And then we also had an updates tier where we give updates on how the film was going. We explained the team, of people who were on the project. And then we made these sort of like bio pictures for, all the people involved with the film. So we raised all this money, which got us through production. And then we did a post-production campaign that helped me pay my post-production team, my editor, my composer. It helped us pay for film festival submissions. And then also some costs came up during production that we couldn't cover, so this sort of paid me back. And both of those campaigns were successful, and we got to make the film, and it was amazing. We were so grateful that it worked out for us. And I think we used very specific strategies to make sure we were successful on those campaigns. And so I'm gonna break those down for you all. Let's get started. Strategy. Before you even begin planning your crowdfunding campaign, it's really important that you're very honest with yourself about what's realistic for you and your team, or if you don't have a team, just really what's realistic for you. Now, I think there's a way, if you have the right film, the right strategy, the right campaign, whatever level of budget you have, there's a way through the power of crowdfunding to hit that budget. But of course, it becomes harder depending on your budget number, the size of your network, the audience for your film or lack thereof, and your time and energy. However, if you don't have the time or the energy required to make a successful campaign work, you may need to reassess what tactics you're using or what budget you're gonna go after. And the reason why we're thinking about strategy before we start anything else is it's really hard to reassess your tactics or your budget number once you've already started. So you want to make sure you're very clear about what your budget is and how you're going to go after it before you even start building your campaign. To find a budget that's realistic for you, I think you need to consider these 3 questions. Number 1, what is the absolute minimum amount you can make your film for? Now for us, for The Ladder, I wrote the short with friends in mind, of people I could ask to act in it. I wrote it with locations in mind that had a pretty good sense that I could get access to for free. And so at the end of the day, if I just wanted to make a film. I knew that I could pay for a flight for me and my cinematographer, Toby, and we could get some friends together and make the film for super, super cheap. But of course, no one would get paid on it. It wouldn't be the best production quality, but it still would have existed. And so my point is, think about what resources you have access to. And if nothing worked out for you and you didn't reach your crowdfunding goal, like what is the minimum you could make your movie for? Is it $500? Is it $1,000? If your target budget is $10,000, maybe your minimum, that like if you really did a shoestring budget, cut corners, made things happen, maybe you can make it for $2,000. You know, it's important to think of what your minimum is when you're going into production. Number 2, how many people do you and whoever's helping the campaign have across your social networks that you think you could direct message? Being able to actually reach out to people directly, personally, communicate with them is what's gonna allow you to be successful. And the more people that you can reach out to, the easier raising your budget becomes. Number 3, who is the target audience of your film? This one is gonna be huge because it's gonna determine probably what your average donation amount is gonna be. For example, if your film is mainly targeted towards Gen Z college students and you think most people who are gonna donate to your film are just gonna be your friends, unfortunately, Gen Z college kids are broke, so they're probably not gonna be able to donate that much money, and it may be a lot harder for you to reach your goal. You have to imagine what type of people are gonna be going to your crowdfunding campaign page and making that decision to actually donate money to you. So it's important you keep in mind, like, who is this film for? In our case, the target audience was my hometown. Like the narrative around my crowdfunding campaign was that I was going back to my hometown and I wanted my community to come together to support this project, and that's exactly what happened. Once you've answered these 3 questions, you have the information you need to start the next phase of the crowdfunding process, campaign planning. So the first step of campaign planning is gonna be figuring out what your budget is. And I asked you previously to think about what your minimum budget is, and then in a dream scenario, what you'd really love to make the film happen on. And with those figures in mind, you can figure out, where does your budget actually land? For some people, the minimum budget they need to make a film is $0. Maybe you already own a camera, you already own sound equipment, and at the end of the day, if you just got friends together, you could make something. And then maybe your dream budget is $10,000. That's great. Maybe your target crowdfunding budget can be $8,000, or for others who have an ideal budget of $7,500, their minimum may be $2,500. Obviously, you're gonna make your film on whatever budget it needs to be, but you wanna be sure that you round up on figures, you account for different costs, and you're ultimately gonna be wanting to crowdfund more than what you actually need. I think the main challenge with budget is figuring out the number that's low enough that it feels doable, but high enough that it covers your production. Also, in the campaign planning process, you want to think about social media and branding. I'm very lucky in the fact that professionally I do graphic design, and so when I was doing the latter crowdfunding campaign, I was able to build all of the creative assets we needed. I was able to produce my own pitch video. But if you're making a film, you may not have the same comfortability in doing graphic design and doing pitch videos and running social media and things like that. And so you may want to reach out for help. Now, if you don't have someone who can help you for free, you may want to hire a graphic designer. Now, if you don't have money to hire a graphic designer, something to consider is maybe you reach out to a graphic designer and say, hey, we're doing this crowdfunding campaign. We're trying to raise X amount of dollars, and we really need someone who can build all the graphics for it, but I can't pay you right now. But ask them what their rate is, or figure out what they want to be paid to do the graphic design work, and then you can build that into your production budget. And so if they're down, maybe they can make the graphics for it, and then once you raise the amount, then pay them after you do it. I've actually done this for some friends on their crowdfunding projects, and I think there might be creatives out there who would be down to help out in that way. However, if you really can't find any help, obviously there's things like Canva that can help you make content. But whatever you do, just make sure that your branding for your crowdfunding campaign feels intentional, it feels consistent, and it should legitimize your film and your brand. And that goes into your pitch video as well. Making a good pitch video is super important for crowdfunding campaigns. You want it to be exciting, you want it to be short and sweet, and you also want it to show that you either have the passion or the skills necessary to make the film happen. People want to watch a crowdfunding campaign and feel like you are the right person to make this movie, and that you are impressive and that they want to support you in this journey. While your film is probably going to be amazing, chances are most people who are gonna donate because they believe in you. Now, in addition to building out the pitch video and graphic design components for your page, you're also gonna wanna think about where your landing page is gonna be on social media. Now, some people, they make accounts for their short film, and that's kind of what they promote and they post there. I didn't like that approach. I personally have an Instagram account for my film production company, so we just used my production company account to post about the film, though on Facebook we did make a page for the latter. And that was because some of our audience, which I think are on the older side, are probably more likely on Facebook. And so I did want to have a landing page that made sense for that platform. So in this campaign planning phase, you have to decide on your budget. You have to build out all the components of your content that you're going to be posting and plan out how you're going to post it, when you're going to post it. And once you have these components in place, you're ready for the next phase, which is community building. Community building is still happening before you launch your campaign. There's a lot of things to consider before you launch, and it's super important because day one is probably the most important day of your crowdfunding campaign. So if you haven't done community building before you start your crowdfunding campaign, it's gonna be an uphill battle. And if you want that first day to be successful and for you to raise money quickly, you're gonna have to be very intentional about the communities you're targeting. So let me explain how this community building works. When I did the latter, raising $15,000 felt so out of my reach, but raising $5,000 seemed more doable. So I basically identified 3 groups in my head that I could go after that could make my work feel more realistic. Group 1 was people in Ketchikan, my hometown, who would want to see the film made there and knew me and my family when I was a kid. Group 2 was my family and close friends from college. And then at the time of doing this crowdfunding campaign, I was living in Seattle. So the third group of people was my community in Seattle, who were high school friends, people that I knew at the time. And suddenly I was no longer going after $15,000. I was just going after $5,000 3 times, which in my head seems a lot easier. And again, this all goes back to being realistic with the network that you and your crew can actually reach out to. If you don't think you can reach out to enough people where you can break up your budget into more doable chunks, you may have to reevaluate your budget, or you may have to think outside the box over which audiences you're targeting. And these are all important considerations, and you have to do all this planning before you launch your campaign. But once we've done a bit of this work, we're ready to go into the next phase, which is the campaign. I think day one is the most important part of a crowdfunding campaign. For the latter, we raised 50% of our goal on day one. The key to having a successful day one is to announce and promote your project leading up to the actual campaign and individually reaching out to people and telling them the day and time your campaign will go live and that you need contributions. One thing we did is we made a Google form that told people about the project, asked if they would be willing to commit to contribute on day one, and then we asked for their email so that when we actually launched, we could email them and be like, hey, remember you committed to donating this way? And that was how we got our first 1,000 raised. Ultimately, crowdfunding can just be a math calculation and hustle process. I think there's a statistic of like only 1% of people who see a post about a crowdfunding campaign on social media will actually contribute monetarily to that campaign. But like 20% of people who get a personal message will actually go to a campaign and contribute. During the latter, every day after day one, I was calculating how much money we had left to raise, how many people I had to reach out to get that, and then I divided that number to how many days were left in the campaign. And all I did was every day I reached out to that many people. And that was truly how we ended up raising all the money we needed in 10 days. One thing that I did when I reached out to people is that I would ask them to contribute to the film, but then I would also say, if you can't contribute or simply don't want to contribute right now, would you consider sharing it? Or would you consider liking the page? Now, those are all things that help your crowdfunding campaign. You don't just have to contribute monetarily to support crowdfunding. Also, while you're promoting your campaign, posting about it, people are going to passively discover it and donate. In fact, one of our biggest donors on the film was someone that I did not know before I started my crowdfunding campaign, but he discovered the campaign on TikTok, thought the idea was cool, and then contributed at the highest tier. It's all about a layered approach where you're reaching out to people directly, but you're also posting content so you give people the opportunity to come across your campaign naturally. Another way to get exposure on your crowdfunding campaign is to reach out to news sources. So again, I was shooting my film in my hometown, so we reached out to the local radio stations and local newspapers to see if we could get some coverage on the film, and getting earned media in this way is a great way to get people to know about your campaign. So I've broken down what we did to be successful on the latter and gave a lot of tips, but I thought it would be really great to also showcase that my experience wasn't completely unique. So many of these strategies that I've broken down in this video have worked similarly for other people, and they can work for you too. So here are 2 case studies on crowdfunding from some of my friends that I think are great learning opportunities. Case study 1. The Other Side. Josh Leong is an incredible award-winning filmmaker who I went to NYU with. His latest film, Chicken, which he did a Seed and Spark campaign for, premiered at the 2022 Tribeca Film Festival, and he was a spotlight director with NBC Universal's Scene in Color film series. Plus, while he was a student, he did a $30,000 crowdfunding campaign for his film, The Other Side, and I sat down with him to ask him some questions about how he made the film happen.
Thanks for having me. I'm Josh Leong. I am a writer and director. I graduated from NYU along with Emilio. I'm a narrative director. I love kind of stories that are inspired by true stories. A lot of social impact related work, but I really believe that the films we make and the stories we tell can't just exist in a vacuum. Like the stories that we show on screen are real and they're in our own backyards. And so I love finding and trying to champion stories like that and getting people together to partner to tell important stories that raise awareness for important issues. And hopefully we get to continue doing that. The Other Side was a much more hands-on experience. We had really a whole campaign. It was a very, very time-intensive, exhausting process. And I would say to everyone crowdfunding is that if you crowdfund, especially if you're crowdfunding a significant amount of money, this is not just something you set up and leave in the background. It is a full-time job to fundraise. So you got to be aware that if you're crowdfunding, you're signing up for like a long time and a lot of effort to do this. It's not passive money. If anything, I would almost treat the crowdfunding as literally just the portal for people to donate to. And you got to still solicit all that money. You still got to send this out. You got to hustle it like nobody's business. I think it's very rare for films to just like passively generate income on, Kickstarter or Indiegogo or whatever. I think startups and tech companies and products like that are a little bit more successful with just kind of passively receiving money, but that just doesn't happen in film. So yeah, I guess like that's one of the things off the bat that we really learned. But moving from project to project, I think we were just deciding what was our commitment level. I think with The Other Side, we were a little bit more naive or open to trying something really big, and thankfully we were able to accomplish it. But certainly with my second film, Chicken, we had decided maybe this is not the kind of thing we have the time or ability or desire to like fully invest in a very intense crowdfunding campaign. And so we set our goal lower and we just changed different things about how we did it. But at the end of the day, both were successful. But yeah, I don't know if I recommend it for every project. And I would certainly love to not crowdfund in the future, but it's certainly a pretty viable way when you're getting started. The other thing I would say is that in our experience, and it's probably different for everybody, that we didn't get a lot of conversion from like social media. So while I think there's merit in having a social media presence, I don't think it was as valuable for us as it was the one-on-one reach outs. So I would say if you're trying to prioritize what's the most valuable thing for your time, I would say writing a nice personalized email to somebody is going to get you far more turnover than spending your hours making a fancy graphic, putting it on Instagram and hoping someone swipes up on your story. At the end of the day, most of our donors were not coming from Instagram. They were coming from our emails.
Case study 2, Chicks. Gina Marie Hernandez is such a powerhouse. We met at a film festival last year, and I was so excited to meet her because actually her Seed and Spark campaign for Chicks was the crowdfunding campaign that inspired me on the Ladder campaign. And so the fact that we now know each other and have been able to talk about crowdfunding together is really awesome. Gina graduated from FSU's film school in 2020, and she's been working for FX, AMC, Disney Plus. She's awesome. Her award-winning film Chicks is awesome. So here's some tips from her.
Crowdfunding is a lot more involved than you think it's going to be. Not in a discouraging way, but just like kind of, I guess that's how filmmaking is in general, where it's like, it's always going to take twice as long or twice as much effort as you think it's going to be. We just knew that we needed money. And I'm very much the type of person that's like, I always feel kind of guilty, like asking for money. Like I never want to be the person like, hey, like, can you give me money? Like, especially for something, like I think film is important for sure, but it's like, when there's like other social issues and everything else going on in the world, it's kind of like, hey, like give me money to make like my passion project. It's like, it's important, but I think it's also like, there's just like this little guilt inside that I think is probably like the first hurdle that like I had to overcome. But what we basically did is that we just knew that we needed to raise money for this film because we wanted to have like this very ambitious, like, like production design and, like make sure that like, our cast gets paid, like kind of just like create something that we wouldn't be able to do if we had a lower budget. And so It is much more involved. And we sort of started with making like a social media page saying, hey, like this is our movie. We all made a video together just saying like, this is why we need the money. This is why we need your help. This is why we want to make the movie and why we're extremely passionate about it. But we can't do it like without, you know, the help of other people. Yeah, we sort of ran, I guess with Seed and Spark, you kind of have to run like a month-long campaign. So we just wanted to make sure that we were able to run it, you know, a couple months, or, you know, obviously the more time you have, the better, but everyone always has like, you know, shorter timelines than you always expect. But we wanted to make sure that we would be able to like finish the crowdfunding campaign, you know, a couple months or at least a month before we started filming or before we started pre-production. So that way, you know, we would be able to use the money instead of kind of having to reimburse ourselves, and also it's like the stress that does come with crowdfunding doesn't overlap with the stress of like, all right, how do I make this movie? So yeah, that was sort of like the basic, I guess like the rundown of how we did it. I don't know if this is bad to say that we didn't totally have a fail safe. We were kind of just like, we just have to do it. We were just very motivated, and I was even more scared when, you know, my team wanted to raise more than we thought we, you know, were originally going to raise. But you know, I think we had just done a lot of like asking people beforehand how much they would raise, and, you know, just kind of shooting for the stars with it. If we didn't raise as much as we did, I just think honestly more just would have come out of pocket. I don't think that we would have postponed it, because I think we were just really determined to film it in the summer. Having that end goal in mind of like, this is why I'm raising this money, and this is why it's really helpful for my project. This is why I can't stop. Like, you know, I need to stay persistent with it, even when there's days that suck, like asking someone for money. People are nicer than you think they would be. So just don't give up. Push through, because then the best part comes afterwards when you actually get to make your movie.
Well, that's what I have for you all today. I hope that you learned something in this video. Crowdfunding is an aspect of independent filmmaking that is insanely hard, but it is so rewarding and can be so fun. And I really hope you took something away from this video. If you did, or if you have any specific questions about something I didn't cover in this video, please comment below, because I'll try to respond to as many people as possible. If you're new here and you like filmmaking or storytelling, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. And if you haven't seen the ladder yet, make sure you go check it out, or the video that I made breaking down how we made the ladder. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos and sharing my personal film work on this channel. So again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you all next time.